37th Annual Gun Rights Policy Conference that is hosted by the Citizens Committee for the Right to Keep and Bear Arms and the Second Amendment Foundation. Just a couple of notes that I wanted to tell you is, one, for the speakers, I'm wearing my charm bracelets. You will hear me behind you. I would also like to introduce you to he doesn't need any introduction, but Massad Ayoob is now the president of the Second Amendment Foundation. This is Alan's golden anniversary being chairman of the Citizens Committee for the Right to Keep and Bear Arms. I would like to ask everybody to put their phone on vibrate, please. Yes. This is streaming on Facebook and YouTube, and then it will be available on YouTube, and it will be connected to SAF's website, and will come from other websites as well. We haven't been together for 2 years. It's been a long 2 years. A lot of things have happened, good and bad. We have brewing, just good and bad. We have other things. We did very, very well in turning back the COVID shutdowns in various states, and that was an incredible cooperative effort by a number of people. But there are a number of people who aren't here this year. And the ones that quickly come to my mind are, of course, Joe Targro. Joe passed away in June of 2020. It was very hard. Because of COVID, nobody could be there. There's no funeral. It was just very, very hard. Dave Cobb passed away just about 2 weeks ago. He was supposed to be here and speak. We had an attorney in Massachusetts who ended up basically being responsible for Boston issuing their permits in a much more expeditious fashion. I spoke to him some afternoon. He said, I have COVID. They're going to make me go into the hospital. And I never heard from him again. People ably took up his work, but he is a loss to our community. And I know each and every one of you has someone that you lost from illness, from COVID or anything. So I would like us to take a minute, a real minute, a whole minute, and just think about those people. And every one of them is every one of these people, not just the gun rights people, or every man's death diminishes my soul. So if we just could take a minute, thank you. Thank you very much. You might notice this year there are a few changes. You don't see any paper in front of you. We didn't hand you a big old bag of paper. There's not a pile of books sitting in front of you. Did you look at the back of your badges? Back of your badges? Those are QR codes. And all I know is that we moved into a whole new world when COVID hit in terms of our offices. Almost everything we did and all those lawsuits and everything else were accomplished by Zoom, emails, Teams, and everything else. So we decided no more paper. The other reason is we have publications and stuff that you all get. I am buying that paper now. I have to tell my supplier how much paper I need from, like right now, I'm going my paper from January 2023 through June 2023. So we're just not going to waste it. We're just going to do things in a more modern way. We've all gotten used to it during COVID. So, yeah, changing things around. We hope you like your mugs. And now I would like to turn it over to Massad Ayoob, who will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, and good morning. Those of you we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance now, correct? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. We'll do the Texas Pledge later. Somewhere the ghosts of Travis, Barrett, and Bowie are watching. Gang, I'd like to welcome our new people here in particular. How many are here for the first time? Okay, I think you'll find it worth your while. And one thing we saw in the last 2 years of the pandemic, we had to go strictly virtual, and that was the bad news. The good news was going virtual reached a whole lot more people, but the bad news was it lost the networking element. One reason you go to any conference with a special purpose is to network with others who are in the same fight. Now, the other side has tried to demonize all of us as a bunch of white supremacists. You'll notice, among other things, if they ever pull that on you, you might want to tell them the last gun conference you were at with a few hundred people, 2 of the first speakers were an Arab and a Jew. Have you noticed the other side is trying to demonize us all as fascists? Well, if so, I hope Godwin's law is right. Whoever in the debate calls the other side's Nazis first automatically loses. Now, given the fact that we do have time constraints here, if they're going to call me a fascist, I'm going to at least try to keep the trains running on time. So, basically, if I have any complaint with this conference, it's the name of it, the Gun Rights Policy Conference. I do not believe in gun rights. Guns are objects. Objects don't have rights. All of us are here today about civil rights, the civil rights of gun owners. And it is absolutely about human rights. Lord William Blackstone, the great commentator on the common law, said that self-defense was the highest of all human rights. They try to call us the insular bunch of white supremacists. Look around you. You see in this room every color, every creed, every gender. This entire room, and indeed our entire movement, crosses every line of the socioeconomic barriers. The rich, the poor, and the in-between. I remember the first time I went to the Bianchi Cup shooting match, the so-called Wimbledon of pistol shooting. I noticed not only did the multimillionaire who flew there to shoot in his Learjet shoot on the same relay as the young man who worked in the auto body shop, but afterwards they went to lunch together. Our values cross all those lines of socioeconomics, all those lines of belief systems. Look around you again. You'll see every color, every creed, every belief system. Among you are atheists, agnostics, deists, all the way to the most deeply devout. And we're here together in a common cause and a righteous cause. Keeping rights that, whether or not you want to, the atheist would call them God-given, rights that are absolutely human rights and have been recognized as such since the dawn of human civilization. Let's go back and look at some of the progress that we've made. The man sitting on my right, Alan Gottlieb, founded the Citizens Committee for the Right to Keep and Bear Arms and the Second Amendment Foundation in the mid-1970s. Now, if you go back and look then, those of us who were around then, there were 7 of the 50 states where there was no provision for the ordinary law-abiding American citizen to carry a loaded gun in public to protect his or herself and family. Today, there are none. Every single state has such a provision. Back then, the states that did have the provision were predominantly may issue, which was in altogether too many places became a code word for we'll give you the permit if you're white, male, rich, and politically connected. Well, pretty soon the time came, as we made progress, that those may-issue states became the minority instead of the majority. And in June of this year, with the Bruin decision in the United States Supreme Court, it put a stake in the heart of that elitist system. Mid-1970s, there was only one of the 50 states, the state of Vermont, where citizens were trusted enough that they didn't need a permit to carry a loaded concealed gun in public to protect their loved ones. Look how far we've come. Today, as of this year, 25 states have adopted that Vermont model that some call constitutional carry, half of the states of the nation. We have made progress, brothers and sisters. You're going to hear this week from some of our strongest warriors, the people who had the boots on the ground, who literally stood before the 9 justices of the Supreme Court of the United States, argued the truth of the matter, argued the facts of the matter, and won for us. You're going to hear from some of the giants, and some of those giants can't be with us. I spoke of the fact that our so-called gun culture crosses the socioeconomic lines. It crosses the political lines, too. We have liberal and moderate as well as the stereotype conservative here. Some of the great giants were absolute self-described flaming liberals. We remember Mark Benenson, one of our strongest voices for gun owners' civil rights, who was head of Amnesty International. Our dear departed friend, law professor Don Cates, who did some of the seminal work, some of the critical, groundbreaking, foundational legal scholarship that absolutely disproved the old BS that the Second Amendment was about a National Guard. A self-described flaming liberal, he marched with William Kunstler. He was one of the Freedom Riders, and he recalled carrying his .30 caliber M1 carbine to protect people from the Ku Klux Klan when they were down there trying to register black people in what was then the segregated South. People try to make us look like other, like we're outsiders. There is no more inclusive subculture in the United States than our American gun owners. Each time one of us gets up here on the dais, it's customary, you guys and gals politely clap. I'm arrogant enough I don't need applause, but I'm going to ask you for something. When I step down, give yourselves a hand, because you're the people on the ground that are making this happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mas, and welcome to all of you to the 37th Annual Gun Rights Policy Conference. We've lost a little bit of attendance due to the Hurricane Ian, a lot of people not being able to make it, including losing a few speakers as well. So we've had to ad-lib a little bit to get us to where we are today, which isn't the first time this has happened at a Gun Rights Policy Conference. 2 things that stick out in my memory historically from our conferences was the year for 9/11. All the airlines shut down. We had a conference coming up. We had to decide if we were going to hold it or not. We decided we had to hold it. It was that important. The airlines luckily opened up a few days before the conference was going to start. and we had a halfway decent attendance, but something really important came out of that conference. We had 4 airline pilots that happened to be there that showed up, representing, I think, 3 different major airlines, and out of that conference grew the Armed Airline Pilots Association, which ended up with a lot of activity from our attendees and a lot of pushing and lobbying and grassroots work, ended up passing the law that allowed pilots to be armed in the cockpits of the airplanes. That came out of one of the gun rights policy conferences. And then we had a situation at a gun rights policy conference held in Chicago, where a gentleman working for the Federal Aviation Administration was being transferred from a regional facility to Honolulu, Hawaii, and he didn't want to go. And so he decided to burn down the facility, which knocked out all the air traffic control for the Midwest, and of course closing all the Chicago area airports. And that also affected our attendance that year, and speakers couldn't get in, and we had to have an agenda that was updated virtually hourly. Julianne, my wife, did an amazing job scrambling. Nobody really could tell that the agenda was changed. Everything stayed on track, and ended up being one of the best gun rights policy conferences we ever had. We actually had to pull people out of the audience to bring them up and put them on panels to speak, because a lot of the speakers couldn't get in. And it was a very great conference and very emotional, because at that conference we had Otis McDonald of McDonald versus Chicago fame and his whole family in Chicago at the conference, and it was just an amazing event. When I started these gun rights policy conferences 37 years ago, it was really aimed at bringing the leaders of the major national groups together to try and get on the same page and plot strategy so we could all be, marching in the same direction. And it's just a small group of people for the very first gun rights policy conference. And then as time went on, when we had the assault weapon bans pushed in 1994, and California in particular was pushing one, a lot of grassroots groups sprung up all across the country. But they didn't have the training or working with anybody else, and so we brought in leadership from various grassroots groups. And then, of course, over the years, we've now expanded it out to bring in gun rights activists, and of course now being streamed on YouTube and Facebook Live. And then on top of that, it's my understanding that the feed from YouTube is going to be on C-SPAN as well. So we're reaching a significant number of tens of thousands of people all across the country. So your work here today is very, very important, particularly in light of the Bruin decision. It's a whole new ball game out there. And of course, a lot of the battles now have moved to the legal playing field rather than the legislative playing field in nationally and in most states. That's despite the fact that we've had an unbelievable attack on our rights from the most anti-gun administration that we've probably ever had in our nation's history. And despite everything they've thrown at us this year, we've done very, very, very well. All the major things on their agenda, all their gun bans, their magazine bans, everything they've tried to throw at us have really failed. They've passed one national bill that really doesn't do a whole lot of damage to us. While we don't support it and it affects our rights a bit, what we've weathered from this attack has been absolutely amazing, and that's a tribute to your activities on the grassroots level nationwide. I only have a few minutes up here because we have a very tight agenda today. And I just want to say to you that, again, just only leave you with 2 things. You're only going to get out of this conference what you put into it, and likewise, one of the most important things is not on the agenda. It's the networking at the various breaks and lunch functions and receptions. So I want you to get to know each other well, meet people you haven't met before, and help spread the seeds that you're planting in your home states all across the country. So with that, let's move on to the agenda, and let's target victory. Thank you.